Hey guys, we are the Screen Team. I got Mark Sanders here. I'm Chris, and we are getting ready to review an epic Star Wars film. It's called Solo, a Star Wars story. It's one of these spin-off movies that the Lucasfilm team is presenting to the whole Star Wars base, and we're getting ready to review this film. But before we review this film, Mark, you are a huge Star Wars fan, correct?
Absolutely. I'm old enough I can wear one of those T-shirts. I was there when it started in 1977. Sure. 8 years old in the theater. So yeah, I mean it's been a part of my life, my cultural history from the very beginning.
Now I know that you were a pretty big fan of The Last Jedi, right?
Absolutely, yeah. I thought Last Jedi was genius. I blogged about it, responded. Actually, 3 different blogs that dealt with the criticism and my own thoughts about the movie. Yeah, I was a big fan.
Yeah, and I appreciate you doing that, and it brought new insight to my thoughts on that movie. So I thought that was really well done. Are you familiar with some of the drama that's gone on with the Solo film before the movie came out?
Sure. Chris Lord and Phil Miller brought on initially as directors, thought that they were going to bring sort of a fresh new take on it. The producers really didn't like the direction it was going, so they brought Ron Howard in. Yeah. Reports indicate that he reshot something like 70% of the movie.
Yeah.
The script was by Lawrence Kasdan and his son
Jake.
And Lawrence Kasdan wrote The Empire Strikes Back, which I consider the greatest science fiction movie of all time.
He wrote Raiders. Didn't he write Raiders too?
Yeah.
So yeah, he's big time.
So I mean, this whole thing had its bona fides from the very beginning. I had heard mixed reviews going in. I really went in without any sort of expectations about what it was going to be. I was hopeful that it was going to exceed my expectations.
Did it do that?
Actually, it didn't, and I don't think it's necessarily the fault of the movie itself. I mean, for me, I had 2 primary problems with the movie.
Okay.
The first was with the casting overall. I think that bringing in big, well-known stars to play these parts can actually be counterproductive. Woody Harrelson and Emilia Clarke and Paul Bettany all do very good work as actors. But at the same time, when I'm watching them in their parts, I'm thinking about Hunger Games. I'm thinking about Zombieland, especially.
Yeah.
With Woody Harrelson, with Emilia Clarke. Of course, I'm thinking about Game of Thrones. With Paul Bettany, I'm thinking about the Avengers. There's just too many crossovers there in their roles.
So is it fair to say that when you're watching this movie, you're seeing the Hollywood star? You're not getting immersed into the Star Wars universe. You're seeing there's Hollywood right there.
Correct. And my touchstone for comparison is Rogue One. For me personally, I think Rogue One is the second best of all the Star Wars movies. I rank it up just right behind Empire Strikes Back. And I think part of the strength of Rogue One was we kind of knew something about the story. Spies stole the plans for the Death Star. But that was really all we knew about it. And we got to know all of these characters and see their motivations, and they weren't really all familiar faces.
Sure.
With Solo, I kind of knew everything that was going to happen. He was going to make the Kessel Run. He was going to
meet
Chewbacca. He was going to win the Millennium Falcon from Lando Calrissian in a card game, Sabacc. I mean, all those things had been well established. And now, having said that, I took my kids to see it, and especially the older of my 2 daughters. Who's there? My younger daughter went there just because she wanted to see Donald Glover, because she loves Childish Gambino.
Yeah, he's huge now, man.
Yeah, absolutely. She went to see Donald Glover. But the older of my 2 daughters and her fiance really loved the film, and I think that there is a generational difference between I'm going to turn 50 in less than a month, and I've noticed that a lot of my students who are the same age as my kids, my students at the college, have grown up with the prequels and then the animated shows, the Clone Wars and Star Wars Rebels. And the way that they absorb Star Wars is a completely different experience from mine. So not having grown up with the Han Solo legend already implanted in their minds. I think it's a lot fresher. And they both loved the movie. So I'm going to say just check your expectations at the door. If you want, it is a well-made, well-paced, well-acted, and entertaining movie.
Yeah.
I will say that. But ranking it in the pantheon of Star Wars films, it's better than all three of the prequels. It's not as good as, for me, it's not as good as
Force Awakens,
Last Jedi, or Last Jedi,
or Rogue One.
Or Rogue One, yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
Obviously, you can't compete with Harrison Ford. We're not trying to get somebody who did an impersonation of him in this movie. But what did you think about Alden Ehrenreich's performance of Han Solo?
I thought he was the strongest part of the entire movie. The fact that he's not a really well-known actor. I thought he really inhabited the role of Han Solo extremely effectively. I never got the sense that he was trying to get into the mind of a young Harrison Ford. I really felt like he was trying to inhabit this character of a young Han Solo, and he's very appealing. He's got a ton of charisma, and I think he's going to have a huge career in Hollywood, especially after the success of this movie. I mean, because let's be honest, even an unsuccessful Star Wars movie makes about $700 million, right?
Let's hope so. Let's hope so, man. Let's talk about Ron Howard. He took over directing duties of this film after Lord and Miller were let go. He's one of your favorite directors.
Yes.
But when you told me off mic, you said that you love Ron Howard, but you didn't see his stamp on this movie. Is that correct?
Yeah. And maybe I need to watch the movie again to get a sense of what that is. But even in Ron Howard's biggest budget movies, the ones where he's got a lot to work with, big ensemble casts like Apollo 13 or with Parenthood, those all seem very personal and very character driven. And to me, Solo was much more strongly plot driven. It was like they had to hit all of these plot points.
Sure.
It's a heist, so you've got the thing that they're trying to steal, and all the twists and the turns and the double crosses and who's fooling who, and all of those sorts of things. I think if Ron Howard had been involved from the very beginning, working with the script, working with the actors from the very beginning, I think we would have had a very different movie. Essentially, He was brought in to fix what wasn't working for the producers.
Gotcha. Donald Glover, your daughter's a fan of him.
Yeah.
What did you think of his performance as Lando? He's got to think about this one for a second. He's got to watch his words.
I felt like he was too restrained in that. I don't know if he had gone back and watched and was trying to channel Billy D. Williams. I mean, because Billy D. Williams, is just this giant. I mean, he's got so much charm and charisma and everything. And I don't really want to compare the two performances, but I don't know. For myself, I would have liked to seen a little bit more of Donald Glover in that role, letting him do the things, because another movie that I saw him in was The Martian, where he plays the astrophysicist who figures out how to save Matt Damon. I mean, and he's sort of weird and quirky and unconventional, and I think that would have served Lando's character a lot better. I don't think that the role was fully fleshed out for him.
Yeah. One quick question here. If the planets align and the gods say yes, if there's a Solo 2, are you down?
Yeah, I think so, because part of the problem, like I said, for me, part of my personal problem with the movie was that all of the beats were expected and predictable. It wasn't that way for me with Rogue One. I literally didn't know what was going to happen with that. So if there's some other aspect of Han Solo's life before
A New
the
Hope.
the Mos Eisley spaceport. I think that would be really interesting. It also gives me a lot of hope for the Dan Benioff and D.B. Weiss movies, the brains behind Game of Thrones. They've been commissioned to do a completely new trilogy. Rian Johnson, who directed The Last Jedi, is also doing a completely different trilogy. I hope that both of those productions completely ignore the Skywalkers and the whole thing and give us an entirely new experience.
So they can have room to breathe and not live up to expectations.
Right, because part of the fun of going to the movies is being amazed by something that you've never seen before. And when you're dealing with Star Wars, especially when you're dealing with the Skywalker saga, so much of it we already know, and so the bar is already set so high. And that's a real challenge for Disney and for Lucasfilm, is just to keep getting over that bar, because they keep setting it higher and higher for themselves.
It's true. He's Mark. I'm Chris. The movie is called Solo, and you can find it in theaters. Coming up, we got more reviews right here on the Screen Team.